thanks. How are you?
Yes. Well, thank you for doing it. Yep.
2025 Montgomery County Swine Show. We're about to get started. So if you want to bring up your market pharaohs, show class 1, we have Parker Allen, Victoria McFarland, Maven Allen, and Amison Poston. We'll have class 2 on deck, which is Maven Allen, Victoria McFarland, June Allen, Kennedy DeVries, and Amison Poston.
Morning.
Good morning. How are you?
How are you?
Good. Can't complain with this weather.
Today our judge is Kelly Sheets. He's from Zeering, Iowa. He races show pigs, and they call it Vegas Show Pig. Let's give him a round of applause for being our judge this morning.
I would think they would have coffee. You got lucky.
Got lucky.
Our superintendents are Andy Vile and Mike Olson. We also have helping in the ring this morning, Keith Wood.
Good morning. How are you?
How about now? Good morning. It's great to be back. And obviously we start off with the Margaret Barris here, and I think a really nice class to go ahead and start off with. There's one for me that just kind of logically steps into first place, and he's not perfect by any means, and yet I think his balance and build, presence, and proportions are what gets him to the top, and does so relatively quickly. Young lady over here to my right is going to go ahead and win this class. I think just durability, stoutness of feature and function, I think that one has to go ahead and win. If I'm critical of him, I say he probably doesn't go as good as I need him to behind. He's just a bit rigid in his movement, but I think that's a nice one to go ahead and start this particular drive. I think the other belted hog is the one that kind of fits the same mold when you study him from the side in terms of presence and elevation. One that does have a great deal of dimension and shape on the top side of his skeleton. To me, what sort that appear is that he's just a bit more fragile and more refined in his bone work. He's one that maybe once they get a little bit more tentative in that front step, I think a really nice one to go ahead and fall free in this particular drive. The blue hog that's trying to get out here on us is the one that I'm going to go ahead and use third, and he's the one in terms of stoutness of feature I think is probably a class leader and has an advantage there. To me, he's just a little more plain in his overall look. He's a bit nondescript when you get up on top of him in terms of muscle shape. We give him just a nickel more shape and a nickel more punch. I think he's one that can push a little harder and have an opportunity to climb. I think the blue hog that rounds out the class also has a really unique look in terms of density and stoutness. To me, his balance is a little bit thrown off in terms of where he's at, his length of front and his length of hip. That throws his overall balance off. If we could lengthen him off either end, I think he's got an opportunity to climb the ladder as well. But if you would, please congratulate all four of those exhibitors as they exit the ring.
In that class, Victoria McFarland was first with the purple, Anderson Poston was second with the purple, Maven Allen was third with the blue, and Harper Allen was fourth. Our next class, we had Maven Allen, Victoria McFarland, June Allen, Kenny DeVries, and Anderson Poston. On deck, we have third class of Margaret Barrows, Kenny DeVries, Anderson Poston, Madison Burt, and Reese Hertzberg. Today we are joined by our 2025 Montgomery County Fair Queen, Delaney True, first runner-up, Natalie True, and our Miss Congeniality, Lily Anderson.
when we get into class 2 here of these market hogs, and I think we've got a really challenging second and third place, honestly, but I think there's a very logical place to go ahead and start. It's the young lady's black bear here right in front of me, and I just think in terms of presence and build and balance, skin and hair quality is off the charts. I think this one has to go ahead and win, and it really wasn't close. I think he just puts a lot of things together. If I get ultra critical of him, he probably needs just a shot more muscle there in the seat of his pants, but I think that's an awfully good one to go ahead and start this particular class. Like I mentioned, I think it gets really hard and difficult to sort this pair, and I guess just for me, it's personal preference. I like the young lady over here with the chromed up one to go ahead and be second in this class, and I think just in terms of density and balance, he's the one that has to go ahead and sort 2 for me. He is sharper ahead of his blade. He's not as elevated in his head carriage and one that wants to be a little bit lower at the point of his shoulder. And yet I think just density, spread, and shape help elevate him past the 1 and 3. The blaze face hog that comes through is one that you absolutely have to admire where he's at in terms of dimension up high. He is one that is more elevated at the point of his shoulder. To me, he's a bit more refined in his bone work. He's a little longer bodied and a little more jam fronted, and I think that throws off his balance and makes him a bit disproportionate there from that regard. I think an ultra nice one to go ahead and land 3 in this particular drive. The blue hog is the one I like for 4th, and just in terms of a basic fundamental market hog, if you had a finisher full of them, I think you'd make a lot of money in today's game, because I do think that's a practical center body. It's very evident that that one has made it to the feeder and done a good job depositing muscle up high. I think a really nice one that's just a little bit vanilla in his overall look from the side. Need to elevate that one and make him cleaner ahead of his blade. The belted bear that rounds out the class again is one that's got plenty of dimension. He's great in his hind leg. I actually like the way that he functions and bends that hind leg. To me, again, he's a little lower set at the point of his shoulder. He wants to deviate behind his blade, and he's pretty nondescript in that muscle shape up high. But a really nice class. If you would, please put your hands together for those exhibitors.
In that class, Kennedy DeVries was first with the purple. Second was Victoria McFarland with the purple. Third, Anna Poston with the purple. Fourth, June Allen with the blue. And fifth, Maven Allen with the blue. In this class, we have Kennedy DeVries, Anna Poston, Madison Burt, and Reese Persberg.
Well, again, I think a very logical place to go ahead and start in this class, and I think the young lady's barrow here is one that does so because he's just so fall-free in my mind. I think he's one that's heavy-duty in his skeleton. He's elevated at the point of his shoulder. He's good ahead of his blade, and one that gets out and hits the surface with a tremendous amount of comfort, and one that when you get up on top of him, I think from the side he can look like maybe there's not a whole lot of pig there, and then when you get up on top of him, I actually think he is the heaviest muscled one in class, and genuine, I guess, in terms of where he's at, in terms of muscle dimension and pattern. I think that's a very logical place to go ahead and start in this particular drive. Young lady with the paler skin belted hog over here straight in front of me is the one that's going to go ahead and be second. And I say a little, I think he's more genuine, and that's where I draw issue with this one. He does have a tremendous amount of shape up high, and one that you think has a lot of dimension. And when you study him as he goes directly away from you, I think he wants to funnel to his base and start to taper in his foundation. He is one, again, that's just a nickel more refined in his bone work relative to our class winner. I think that's a very logical place to go second in this particular class. It got pretty close for me because there's some trade-offs between 3 and 4, and I like to use the young lady's black and white spotted up one to go ahead and be third. I think just from a presence and freshness of body and freshness of skin and hair coat, I think he's the one that needs to elevate in this class. I do like his pattern from the side, and he looks really neat when she's able to get him elevated. He does get a little shorter and steeper out his rump. He is one that when he comes right at you, he closes up in his knee and wants to come in there in his knee. He's one that we've got to give a shot more muscle. I think he gets pretty nondescript when you get up on top of it. And I think that's the advantage of the 4th place hog. He definitely has more up high. There's a bigger back lead in that one and a bigger hip and rump. To me, he's a little more deviated in his top line. He's lower in his head carriage and doesn't necessarily want to elevate for that young lady. But I think that's an excellent class of hogs. If you would please give those exhibitors a big round of applause.
In the next class, first place was Kennedy DeVries with the purple. Second, Aniston Poston with the purple. Third, Madison Burt with the blue. And fourth, Reese Hertzberg with the blue. Now we're going to pick our champion barrow. We'll have Wilhelm McFarland, Kennedy DeVries, and Kennedy DeVries. Services from here in Red Oak has brought some donuts for the exhibitors, and they are on the back table here by the rabbits if you would like to get some for the exhibitors. We want to be sure to thank them.
as I come back out here for Champion Barra. I think we've got 3 representatives that all represent their classes extremely well. And when we think back to those classes, I know they weren't that long ago, but I think we see the most fault-free hogs out here that offer us the most complete package and honestly, probably the best 3 pigs out of all those Barras we saw. And so I think all 3 of these exhibitors need to be commended, and yet I think there's one out here that just kind of separates itself in terms of balance and build and just sheer freshness of center body and youthfulness. I think there's one that's really, really good. One young lady right here in front of me is going to be your champion. Congratulations.
If you want to have on deck the first class of market guild. Caden Rousseau and Maven Allen. Entering the ring is Victoria McFarland's reserve champion from the 2nd class of market barrows.
The second out of that class drops in, and I do think that's a high quality individual as well. I think he's one that's good in his shape and good in his density, one that maybe comes apart a little bit when he gets elevated and doesn't want to stay collected in his top line, and yet I think he fits out here with the rest of them. One that's really, really neat. As we go back and think about that, I thought it was actually a pretty close there for champion, and one that pushed awfully hard, and we get back out here, and really it's a very logical decision. The young lady that wins the last class will be your reserve champion. Congratulations.
Reserve Grand Champion Market Barrow goes to Kennedy DeFries.
this younger or lighter weight market gilts. I think we got one that logically slates first in this particular drive. The young lady's built-in gilt is the one I'm going to use just from a spread and dimension standpoint. I think that one has to go ahead and win. There's more product laid on that hog in a more useful package, I guess. One that has to go ahead and lead this particular drive just in terms of dimension. I don't take anything away from the young man's white gilt here, because I think that's a good one in terms of just practicality and just an everyday basic kind of a pig. I think one that you have to admire from that standpoint. Relative to the one that wins the class, this one is plainer in her overall muscle shape. She's a bit lower at the point of her shoulder. I have to admire her for being mobile and getting down here and cover the surface, but that one's got to bring more punch getting higher in this particular class. Please put your hands together for those exhibitors.
Have a good day.
In that class, Maven Allen was first with the purple, and Caden Bissau was second with the blue. For the Grand Champion Market Barrel, the banner was sponsored by Gary and Rhoda Hartstack, and the Reserve Grand Champion banner was sponsored by Troy Lachelli Preston. Entering the ring is Harper Allen. On deck, Aniston Poston. On deck, we'll have June Allen and Madison Burt.
Well, again, I think another logical place to go ahead and start in this particular class of market gilts. And is she perfect? No, not by any means. But I think this is one that you have to admire from her levelness of pattern and the amount of spread she's got up high. There's a huge blade working in that gilt, and she just carries that dimension from there back relative to the one that falls below her. I think that one needs to be more laid back in her shoulder angle. I think that would allow her to be more comfortable as she gets out and covers the surface. She's very upright and pretty stilty off that front end. I would like to freshen her up her center body, give her just a nickel more fill, and I think that'd help her balance even more, but I think that's the one that has to go ahead and logically win this class. Doesn't take anything away from the young ladies gilt, because I do think that one, in terms of skull shape and jawline, elevation, elevation of shoulder, and one that is extremely trendy ahead of her blade. One you have to admire from that standpoint. She is super lean and raw on the top side of her skeleton, and I think that correlates down low. She's harder and drier about her center rib cage, quite a bit drier back through that rear flank, but one again I think is really good in the amount of muscle she's got. Logically goes ahead and fits second here in this particular drive. If you would, please congratulate those two exhibitors.
In that class, Anderson Poston was first with the purple, and Harper Allen was second with the blue.
Well, a little bit of size difference here between these two gilts, and yet I think even though she's bigger and heavier weight, as we hit heavier weights, we start to run into more problems. I do think she's the one that logically goes ahead and falls here in first, and she's the one that in my mind just has to surface because of her presence and build and freshness. I think that's one in terms of spread up high and shape, overall hair texture and skin and hair quality. I think that's the one that looks like she's here to win. I think I like that one an awful lot to go ahead and lead this particular drive. The young lady's gilt that comes in second, I think, is probably more appropriate in her rear leg and the flex and function of that rear leg relative to our class winner. She doesn't come with enough product and not as much spread up high. Obviously, there's quite a bit of weight difference. It looks like from my vantage point, and one that needs to come with some more spread and punch. But a really good class of gilts. Would you please congratulate those exhibitors?
In that class, Madison Bird got first with the purple and June Allen second with the purple. Now we're going to choose champion market gilt. We have Maven Allen out of the first class, Anderson Poston out of the second class, and Madison Bird out of our third class.
Well, if you would please congratulate these three exhibitors getting to this point. I know that we don't have a lot of market guilds, but I think tremendous quality here at the top end of these, and ones that you have to admire for the parts that they bring to the table. Obviously, they're all very different, and typically when you don't have a lot of them, you're not able to just latch onto a type and follow that. But I think all of them, in terms of a market guild, have plenty of spread and shape up high. They're good in their pattern and good in their lines. I think there's one that's just kind of head and shoulders above the rest. Young lady here right in front of me will be our champion. Congratulations.
Our grand champion market guild goes to Madison Burt. Now we'll have June Allen come in.
Well, that second place out of that class comes in and actually gets pretty close, because I do think that guild still carries a fair amount of quality. If you study her from the side, I think she's good in her pattern. I love the way that she uses her hind leg relative to that class winner. And I thought probably of the class of market guilds we saw was probably the closest pair. As we get them back out here, I think it's between her and the solid black guild for reserve. I think those two are highly competitive in what each of them offer. I guess for me, I think there's one just in terms of just basics. I think there's one that brings more muscle and more punch. The young lady's black guild will be your reserve. Congratulations.
Our reserve champion market guild goes to Annis and Poston. We will now choose our grand champion market hog. And that will be Madison Burt and Kennedy DeVries. Our champion market guild banner was sponsored by Kyle and Katie Olson. Our reserve market guild banner was sponsored by in memory of Frank E. Jones.
I think two very nice market hogs out here for grand overall in the market hog division, and obviously very differing in their types and kinds, and yet I think both very high quality individuals in terms of the different pieces that they offer. I'm not sure the story on the market deal, whether that's a Berkshire and what the end game is, but I think that's a very high level Berkshire, and one that just from the product and balance and freshness of body and skin and hair, I think you have to admire that one. And yet I think as we get them back out here and get them against each other, I just think the gulf is so wide in terms of quality and balance and build. That young lady's barrel is awfully good. He'll be a champion. Congratulations.
Kenny DeVries is the grand champion market hog. Will bring in her reserve grand champion market hog for the overall grand champion market hog.
we'll bring the reserve barrow in here, and honestly, I think he definitely steps right in and does not make any sort of step off in terms of quality. And actually, we think back to the barrow drive. I think this young lady does such a tremendous job getting these presented that it didn't matter, I guess, which one she was going to show in the barrow drive. I think either one of those was probably won, regardless of the direction that she chose to pick. I think that barrow's awfully good. He'll be your second best. Congratulations.
Canadian Freeze was a reserve Grand Champion Market Hall. Bank Iowa sponsored our overall Grand Champion Market Hall banner, and Fairway sponsored our reserve overall Grand Champion Market Barrel banner. Now we will start our swine production classes. The first class we have Addison Comfort, Noah Comfort, Cooper Comfort, Addison Comfort, Brooklyn Comfort, and Taylor Tickler. Now that there's a small break, don't forget to get your donut over by the Rabbit Cage, sponsored by Farm Credit Services. On deck, we'll have Hadley Hoyt, Case Bruning, Adeline Ellis, Noah Comfort, and Kaylin Tippler.
That maybe where you have been food prepping long for your house. Well, I was thinking last night, it literally took me 15 minutes to whip up 2 tater tot casseroles and 3 meatloaves. And put them in the freezer. And I thought, why don't we do that for your house? Like I used to do when y'all were little. You know what I mean? Maybe it's easier to like do it on a Saturday and just have.
We got a little bit of a rodeo out there in the first class of productions, and yet I'll try to talk them so it makes the most sense and try to point at the one I'm talking about as we go so that you know and we're not confused. They're kind of all the same color and kind of all the same shape if we're being honest. But the young man with the most polka dotted one head over there in the corner, number 69, is going to go ahead and be first in this particular class. I think that's the one just in terms of product and sheer, I guess, mass and dimension is the one that has to go ahead and win. He's one that's just a nickel refined in his bone work, and yet when you study some of these out here, I don't think any of them are super heavy boned, and so that's the one we're going to go ahead and start with. On down the line, it actually gets a little bit closer, and there's a lot of similarities between all these hogs. I think the young man here right in front of me is going to go ahead and be second, just in terms of product as well. When you get down to this many, I guess, similarities, you just kind of have to find the small differences and boil it down to basics. And I guess just in terms of the amount of muscle, I think that's the one that has to go ahead and follow and go second in this particular class. Young lady here in front of me is the one that's going to be third, and I think that one, obviously, when you get in behind her, probably doesn't just have a tremendous amount of muscle, and yet when you study her frame size and extension, I think that's the one that you can project the most muscle on, right? I think she's the one that gives you a look that she could get to a heavier weight. I know some of these are at a smaller weight right now, and we have to study them more as feeder pigs than anything, but I think that's the one that gives you the opportunity to lay more pounds of product on. As we go down the line, I think sorry, I got myself confused. The barrel over here, the sandy colored one, is the one I go ahead and use fourth, and I think he's the one that follows the type and kind of the one right ahead of him. That's the one in terms of extension and frame size, I think has to go ahead and fall in this particular spot. No, there's not as much muscle on him as what I like to see, and he is a bit more compact in his overall makeup than the gilt that goes directly in front of him. I think that's another one that you have a lot of value in as well. The Duroc appearing one here in front of me is the one that's going to go ahead and be fourth, and she definitely has a lot of spread and one that you have to admire from that standpoint. You study her, I don't think that hind leg functions quite the way it needs to. I think she's a bit tentative in her step and probably going to have some trouble as she hits to a heavier weight. For me, this one's carrying just a bit too much finish at this particular weight. I'd like to trim her up and wait for that fat deposit to come. But I think a nice one in her own right. The gilt that rounds out the class is one, again, that you like the extension and elevation of that one. There's obvious opportunity for weight. That one's belly bust is a concern for me, and that's why she slides down. We've got to tighten that up. Obviously, that's something that needed to be fixed along the way, and yet I still think there is value in that hog. If you would, please give all the exhibitors a big round of applause.
In that class, Cooper Comfort was first with the blue, Kaylin Tippler was second with the blue, third was Addison Comfort with the blue, fourth, Noah Comfort with the blue, fifth, Brooklyn Comfort with the blue, and rounding off the class was Addison Comfort with the sixth. In this class, we have Hadley Hoyt, Grace Bruning, Adeline Ellis, Noah Comfort, and Kaylin Tippler. On deck, we'll have Hadley Hoyt, Adeline Ellis, Reese Persberg, Brooklyn Comfort.
Barb even left for a minute. Did you know how long is it going to be? And I sent him a picture. I'm like, there's nobody left. And I said, this is how many people are left interested. And me. But I'm not.
over it hours ago.
Yes. At least it was nice.
Yeah.
But, oh, I know.
We talk about production, and really the main focus of that is getting the most amount of pork to the rail in the leanest package, or I guess the most appropriate amount of finish. We don't want to add too much fat, and yet I think that one is appropriate. And she's flexible enough to get up and make to the feeder every day. That's just a basic, good kind of hog that wins this class relatively handily. A little late to the party here with the sandy colored one, and yet I think she's the one that follows our class winner relatively well in terms of the amount of dimension that she possesses. You study her from the side, she probably gives off the impression that she doesn't have a lot of muscle, and yet when you get up on top of her, I think she's the one that closely matches the second place hog in this particular class. The two-tone gilt over here on the far end is the one I go ahead and use for third, and for me, I just want to make sure I had that right. The two-tone gilt is the one I use for third. I think just in terms of flexibility and function, I think actually that one rises up just in terms of where she's at. She probably doesn't have as much muscle has the spotted barrel right ahead of her. Again, I think she's more appropriate in her carcass composition when you study her up high. I think she's leading her across her 10th rib. That's what gets her in the third. The spotted up kind of Berkshire appearing barrel, I guess, is one that when you study him up high, he gives you a look of dimension up high, and yet when you study that one as he goes to his foundation, he tapers relatively quickly, and so that makes me think he's maybe counterfeiting the amount of dimension that he's got. I think a very nice one to go ahead and fall fourth in this particular drive. The young man's red gill right here in front of me that rounds out the class is again another one that you admire the amount of product that she has on behind, and yet we've got to power her up high and give her just a shot more punch. I do like that one's bone and function. I think she covers the surface with a great deal of ease. Would like to give her just a shot more belly and body as well. They're a really nice class of production hogs. If you would please give those exhibitors a big round of applause.
In that class, Taylor Tipler was first with the blue, second, Noah Comfer with the blue, third, Hadley Hoyt with the blue, fourth, Adeline Ellis with the blue, fifth was Case Bruni. In this class, we have Hadley Hoyt, Adeline Ellis, Reese Hersberg, and Brooklyn Comfort. On deck, we'll have Wesley Mainquist and Madison Ramsey.
class of production hogs. We're starting to get to an appropriate market weight, I guess, in my opinion. And
Yesterday, I was here forever. I would love
to. Going to
to.
go ahead and win this particular class.
I told Aaron, I said, next year I'm going to have to teach someone to do this.
Proportions and scale,
It's easy until it's not.
heaviness and structure.
I
think
know,
that's the
but
one
it's
that has to go ahead and win
I
this
know,
particular
and I
class.
said
Is he the leanest?
it's
No, definitely
an
not the
easy
leanest
job
in this
until it
class.
crashes.
I still think
And then
he's
it's
appropriate for
panicky.
where he's at and his maturity. I think he's the
It's
one
all
that ends
good.
up leading this class relatively handily for me. The young lady here in the center of the ring is the one that goes ahead and ends up second. And I do think in terms of the leanness and trimness package, I think she's the one that probably has an advantage even over our class winner. And yet I still think she's the one that opens up with a great deal of dimension relative to the rest of her contemporaries. I think that's an awful nice one to go ahead and land second in this particular drive. The real sandy colored one along the fence is the one that goes ahead and ends up third. And I just think kind of fits the same type and pattern of what our second place hog is. Again, one that's got a great deal of spread up high. She's probably more trim than what our class winner is. And yet I think she's quite a bit more nondescript in her muscle shape. She's quite a bit more fragile in her bone work. I think a really nice hog that ended up third in this particular class. The spotted one that goes out next is the one that ends up fourth, and one that I think looks like she has a tremendous amount of spread up high.
Oh, what'd you
Again, like we
do?
talked in the last class, one of those spotted ones. I think that one tapers her foundation and maybe looks just a nickel counterfeit in the amount of
Fair
dimension
food
that she
doesn't
actually
count for
has.
university.
But I think a nice one to go ahead and end up fourth. The sandy color one left in the ring is the one that ends up fifth in this particular class, and the white hog that exits is sixth. But I think, again, a very lean, practical kind of a hog that as we start to get to a heavier weight, I think will come with some more muscle. This stuff doesn't have enough one relative to the ones ahead of her today. And the white hog, very practical about his center body. Love the way that one looks in terms of just a practical market hog. That one needs quite a bit more muscle as you study him from behind. A really nice class of production hogs. And we would please give those exhibitors a big round of applause.
In that class, Madison Ramsey was first with the blue. Second was Reese Kirschberg with the blue. Third, Brooklyn Comfort with the blue. Fourth, Adeline Ellis with the blue. Fifth, Hadley Hoyt with the blue. And sixth, Wesley Herzberg with the blue. In this class, we have Reese Herzberg, Wesley Namequist, Case Bruni, Cooper Comfort, and Madison Ramsey.
we've got some genuine distinguishment of muscle here, and one that young man's gill here right in front of me is the one that wins and does so relatively handily. Actually has a fair amount of dimension up high, and really respect that about her. Being a gilt, obviously, she's leaner over a tenth than what the second place hog is, and ultimately I think that's what lands her in first, because I think both of the first and second place hogs do have some genuine muscle. That's the one I go ahead and lead off this particular class with. The young lady here, number 50, right in front of me, is going to go ahead and have your second place, Vera, and he's one that, again, has a tremendous amount of spread. And relative to some of the earlier classes we've seen where you have to kind of project some of the muscle coming, it has shown up here in a couple of these, and ones that they really admire in terms of the amount of spread and dimension they have. To me, I think from a carcass composition standpoint, he gets just a nickel heavier in his finish relative to the class winner, and that's what ultimately slots him in second in this particular class. The young man with the spotted rump barrel is the one that's going to go ahead and be third in this drive. And again, I think when you just boil it down to basics and start to study these hogs against each other, you just have to use the sheer determination of muscle pattern. And I think he's one that reads a nickel heavier in his muscle to me. Again, as we talked in the second place hog, he's one that is a little bit rounder and more nondescript in his muscle shape up high. I would like to give him just a notch more leanness as you study him. The white hog here in front of me is the one we end up with in fourth, and I think that's a long-bodied, extended pattern kind of a hog that obviously is going to allow several pounds to lay on that frame. To me right now, he just doesn't have enough of it. We've got to come with some more punch to get any higher in this particular drive. And then the young lady's dark red gilt that rounds out the class is one that, when you talk about just extension, you have to admire how much she's practical about her center body. She's obviously done a good job getting to the feeder, and I think that's worked to her detriment. There's not a lot of muscle laid on that frame, but there is a tremendous amount of finish, as you can see, studying up through her head and neck. I would like to clean that one up through its lower portions of its body. What a very nice class of production hogs. If you would please give those exhibitors a big round of applause.
In that class, Case Bruning was first with a blue. Second was Madison Ramsey with a blue. Third, Cooper Comfort with a blue. Fourth, Wesley Manquist with a blue. And fifth was Reese Herzberg with a blue. Now we're going to pick the overall grand champion swine production. Will need Cooper Comfort, Taylor Tippler, Madison Ramsey, and Kate Rooney.
After 4 production classes, probably in the beginning to sound a little bit like a broken record, but unfortunately in a set of hogs like this, there's not a lot of differences to talk about because they're bred for one thing, right? And that's to make pork to go be a very obviously high protein, affordable source of nutrition here in the United States, and one that's especially important to Iowa. And I think we're just talking about subtle differences between all these hogs, and yet I think they've all done a fantastic job of doing their job, and that's providing pork for our state, and ones that when we get back out here and study them, obviously there's some minor differences between them, and there's a heck of a lot of similarities. I guess for me there's one that may look like a minute difference out here among these, and yet when you study them for what they are and you're able to get on top of them and look, I think there's one that has a tremendous amount more product. That's the young man that won that last class. He'll have your champion. Congratulations to him.
Our grand champion swine production individual goes to Case Bruning. His banner is sponsored by Kyle and Katie Olson. Our number 2 in that class was Madison Ramsey, and she'll enter through.
we'll bring that second place last class back in here for reserve champion production hog contention. And quite honestly, I think doesn't really change the quality a whole heck of a lot. I think when we talked about all these basics and what a market hog needs to be, especially in the production aspect, I think that's one that fits right in, and honestly the one I like second best. That young lady will have her reserve champion. Congratulations.
The reserve champion Swine production individual goes to Reese Hirschberg for banner sponsored by Axel and Betty Larson. Now we'll start our production pit for 3. In this class we have Addison Conker and Adeline Ellis, Noah Conker, and Hadley Hoyt.
As we move into these pen of threes, obviously priorities change a little bit, and just so everybody's aware of what I'm looking for, we've seen a lot of these pigs already. I don't think all of them, we've seen a lot of them already in the production classes, and so what we're looking for when they come in, I'm going to evaluate all three of them together as a group, and I'm studying uniformity, carcass composition, leanness, and just quality of that pen. We're going to send them to a pen, and then I'll place them and talk them as they come out. So I've had the opportunity to see a lot of these pigs and know what they look like as they come back out here with the contemporary group. The young lady with the sandy pigs is going to go ahead and win this particular class. We're just going to leave her in that pen, but when we talk about uniformity, we're talking about carcass composition and weight and size distribution amongst that pen. I think all these are evenly distributed in terms of weight. They all look very similar in terms of carcass composition. I think a fairly uniform pen to go ahead and win this particular class. The young lady's spotted pigs over here on the left side are the ones that are going to go ahead and be second in this particular class. And I think, again, in terms of evenness and uniformity of the pen, I think they're a close second. I think there is a little bit of distribution differences between that group and one that we probably need to come with some more muscle with the gilt that leads and the one that comes here next relative to the barrel. I think he probably possesses just a hair more muscle than what they do. And yet, in terms of weight distribution, I think that pen fits together relatively well. I think the same can be said for the young man that's got the tri-colored pen. I guess that comes next. That's going to be our third place pen. And again, in terms of uniformity, I would say follow next best. Are they the most uniform in class? Not by any means. I think there are some outliers in that pen that kind of throw off the distribution and carcass composition of that pen, and that's what logically slots in third in my mind. The pen that rounds out the class, we've got a heavier weight one relative to a couple others in that, and the uniformity is thrown off a tremendous amount. I think all those hogs in their own right are high quality, and yet when we study them in terms of a contemporary group, there's just too much difference between the trio of them, and obviously that's what slots in for. But if you would, please congratulate all four of those exhibitors in this particular class.
In that class, Hadley Hoyt was first with the blue, second, Adeline Ellis with the blue, third, Noah Comfort with the blue, and fourth was Addison Comfort with the blue. In the next class, we'll have June Allen, Reese Hersberg, Brooklyn Comfort, and Taylor Tippler. On deck, we'll have Cooper Comfort, Chase Bruning, Leslie Mainquist, and Madison Ramsey. nationally. We need June Allen, Reese Herzberg, Brooklyn Comfort, and Taylon Tipler. We're on class 2. Please. Reese Herzberg, please bring your pigs to the show ring.
As we get everything sorted back out, come back out into this second class of pin of threes, we've struggled with some uniformity here between all of these pins, and so then it becomes a little more challenging in terms of just weight and trying to keep that group as close as we can. Ultimately, I land on the spotted pigs here in front of me to go ahead and win this particular class. I just think they're the closest in terms of uniformity and ones that when you study them, I do think there's one outlier in terms of weight and carcass composition, and yet I think a pair of them fit together really nicely. Ultimately, that's what ends up landing this young lady in first this particular drive. It got really close between 2, 3, and 4 for me, and ultimately the young man that's sitting on the back of his pin is the one that's going to go ahead and end up second in this particular class. Again, I think we struggle with some uniformity in this particular pin, but I think we've got two heavier weight, high quality gilts that do possess some muscle when you get up on top of them and study them. There's one in there that I'd like to make a bit heavier weight and just add some more total pounds of product too, and yet I think one that logically slots in second for me. Down on the far end, the young lady on the far left is the one that's going to end up third in my particular mind. And ones, again, I think there's two in there that fit together really, really well in terms of weight. Probably not as close as what they need to be in terms of a carcass composition standpoint, and that's what drops them down the line. Unfortunately, there's one in there that, again, is an outlier, and it doesn't really fit in with the other two. And then from a weight standpoint, that's the Sand Gilt that's spreading along the fence. That one's got to be heavier pay weight to get any closer to uniform in that particular pin. And then ultimately, that's what lands the young lady's pin in fourth down here. I think that's one, again, we've got two of them that are relatively the same size, and then one that's significantly smaller. I think a really good class. Again, if you would, please put your hands together for those exhibitors.
In that class, first place goes to Brooklyn Comfort, second place goes to Talon Tippler, third place goes to Reese Hirschberg. Excuse me. First place goes to June Allen, second place goes to Tatum Tippler, third place goes to Reese Hirschberg, and fourth place goes to Brooklyn Comfort. They all received blues. Okay, for our third class of swine production pins of 3, we need Cooper Funker, Case Bruning, Wesley Mainquist, and Madison Ramsey.
class relatively handily. Doesn't take anything away from the young ladies' red pigs down here closest to the previous class winners, because I think that's another pen that we're actually going to go ahead and leave here, because I think that one, as we get back out and study them, I think that one actually, in terms of uniformity and the way that those come together, I do think that they're probably in the top 5 of the most uniform pins we've seen today, and so I think they are perfectly acceptable of staying here. To me, I think the differences between those, I think there's one of them in there that's just a little lighter muscle than what the 3 in the other pin are, and ultimately that's what lands that pin in second in this particular class. But I think a really nice pin to go ahead and be second here. The white pigs are the ones that are going to go ahead and be third in this drive, and I just think that although they probably don't have the muscle mass that I'm looking for, I think 3 that fit together exceptionally well in terms of weight distribution. I think from a uniformity standpoint, you have to like that about them, and yet I just think there needs to come with some more product in that pin to get any higher in this particular drive. I think there are 2 pigs in our 4th place pin that come together exceptionally well. If we were showing them by pairs, he would probably be up the line quite a ways further. Unfortunately, there is one pig in that pin that just falls out in terms of the uniformity standpoint and a weight distribution standpoint, and ultimately that's what lands him at 4th. I think a really, really good class, and would please congratulate those exhibitors.
We are now going to pick our grand champion swine pin of 3. So that will be Hadley Hoyt, June Allen, Case Bruning, on deck, we'll have our breeding goats, which is Victoria McFarland, Kennedy DeVries, Reese Hertzberg, and Aniston Poston.
We get back out here in that champion pin of 3 drive, and obviously there's some differences in weight on down the line, and we're going to roll the champion pin of 3 out. This young man's going to go ahead and win this particular division, and I just think I wanted the crowd to see what I'm talking about. It's difficult while they're all stuffed in pins to be able to understand the reasons and why, but when you study these 3, as you get them back out here, just study what they look like in terms of carcass composition. And I'm talking the spread and dimension they have up high, their leanness over their 10th rib, and they don't have to be the heaviest muscle. They don't have to be the leanest. I want them to look the most the same, and that means in terms of carcass composition and weight, and I think these 3 do it tremendously well, and obviously fit together extremely well. They're going to go ahead and be your champion in this particular division. I probably played my hand in the last class when I said we were going to leave the 2nd place pigs here, and obviously it probably became clear which ones I were going to end up using, and then it actually gets pretty close, I think, as we study back through these pins and for reserve, the 2 previous class winners, and then the 2nd out of that last class. And I think there are some subtle differences, and ultimately what sorts that trio of pins is just sheer pay weight. The young lady that goes 2nd out of that class will be your reserve, and that's purely based on the amount of product that's laid on these hogs. When you study them relative to the ones ahead of them, I think all of them are very unique in the way that they're put together, and yet when you study them again from a carcass composition standpoint, I think they fit together probably 2nd best. And then ultimately there's more pork laid on these 3. Go ahead and congratulate that young lady. She'll have your reserve champion.
Our grand champion swine production pin of 3 goes to Case Bruning. His banner sponsored by Violin Insurance. Our reserve grand champion swine pin of 3 production goes to Madison Ramsey, and her banner is also sponsored by Violin Insurance. We'll now have our breeding guild. After the conclusion of the breeding guilds, we'll do showmanship, and that will be beginner, we'll do first, then junior, intermediate, then senior. So the juniors will be getting ready. Okay, we're going to announce the top 10 rated games. Case Bruning was number 10. Case Bruning was number 9. Madison Ramsey is number 8. Cooper Comfort was number 7. Brooklyn Comfort was number 6. Wesley Manquist was number 5. Madison Ramsey, number 4. Number 3 was Madison Ramsey. Number 2 was Case Bruning, and number 1 was Case Bruning, and his hog gained 2.07 pounds a day. Congratulations. Let's give our judge, Kelly Sheets, another round of applause for his judging today.
and just get out and go across the ring one time, I think I'd see what I need to see, and yet I can't evaluate that right now, and it's hard to work off assumptions when the other ones are getting presented correctly, and yet I still think there's one that surfaces relatively quickly and does so in a hurry and isn't going to get beat. It's a pretty non-negotiable here. I think that young lady, just in terms of pattern, build, density, look from the side, presentation, I think that gilt just kind of pulls all the things together. Is she perfect? No. She's plenty big fronted. I'd like to clean her up with her crest and make her just a nickel more feminine about her head and neck, and yet I think that's the one that wins this class and does so in a hurry. For me, I got really close between 2, 3, and 4. I've had each of these gilts in second in my own mind, and I guess when I just boil the things down, none of them are perfect by any means, and yet when we get them back out here, and when we get them out here and study them for what they are, while the black-headed gilt isn't perfect in her hind leg, I think just look from the side, pattern and build and femininity are obviously what land her there in second. She needs to be better when she goes directly away from you. She wants to step out outside of her body wall, and I do not like that about her. I want to pick her up on her front passengers a little bit as well. She's a nickel rock forward in her blade, and she compensates for that at the ground, but I think that's the one that has to logically go second. The structural concern comes here in 3, but I think there are some big pieces in this gilt. I think she's one that is super dense in her skeleton. She's very heavy in her bone work. She's stout about her head. She's good about her jawline. For me, she's just not quite tall enough at the point of her shoulder, and she wants to deviate there, had her blade hook up, and she's one when you study her going directly away from you, she starts to roll on her hock and play on the outside of her hoof wall. If she could square up and be taller or pointed to the shoulder, I think that's an opportunity to run on up the line. I absolutely love this gilt hind leg. I know she can use it. We've watched her run the fence the whole time. Unfortunately, I just could not get a good presented look at this gilt, but I do think structurally, if we're able to study her out here in the center of the ring, I think that one's actually the second best structured gilt in this particular class. She's opened up wide, she's robust, she's good about her rib cage, just not letting that young lady get a drive on her. I think that's a very, very good gilt. Let's go ahead and put our hands together for all these exhibitors.
In that champion breeding gilt class, we have champion breeding gilt goes to Kennedy DeVries. Her banner is sponsored by Gaines, Iowa, and reserve grand champion breeding gilt goes to Victoria McFarland, and her banner is sponsored by Rick and Esther Carlson. Let's give them a round of applause. Now we have beginner showmanship. We have June Allen, Addison Comfort, Brooklyn Comfort, Adeline Ellis, Hadley Hoyt, and Madison Ramsey. Junior intermediate showmanship, if you want to be on deck, Harper Allen, Nathan Allen, Caden Brousseau, Case Bruning, Madison Burke, Cooper Comfort, Noah Comfort, Reese Herzberg, and Wesley Mainquist.
as we get out here in these beginners. Obviously, it's great to see we have 6 young individuals that are just getting their start in this. I don't know if this is first years or second years or a combination of, but obviously we've got a lot to learn still, and yet we can see the passion in some of them starting to come through already. And obviously, this is a lot more difficult to judge because as a parent watching ringside, this is no longer the livestock being judged. This is your kid, and I never wanted to seem like a personal attack. Any criticism that I may give is constructive, and I'll never run a kid down out here in the showmanship by any means. It's just differences in how things have gone this summer, and I think that showmanship is so much more than a class, and if you've seen me judge before, you know that it's got everything to do with prep time at home, skin and hair work, and your daily routine, and then today is just the culmination of a summer's worth of work. And so I think as we get out here and study them, it becomes very obvious where the prep work has happened. And I know that these hogs have been in the ring before and they don't necessarily want to cooperate. And yet, although not perfect, I think there's one individual whose pig is much more collected out here. They, as an exhibitor, have stayed more collected and focused a little more on eye contact than some of the others. And I think one of the biggest things in this particular division is just to never get between me and the pig. And I think there's one exhibitor that's done an exceptional job. That's the young lady here in front of me. She'll be the champion.
Our beginner champion showman is Madison Ramsey, and her banner is sponsored by Sunderland Veterinary Services. If we can have our senior showmen on deck, Kitty DeFries, Victoria McFarland, and Anna Stemposter.
Well, as we get out here in this showmanship division, obviously these pigs are ready to go back and lay down, and they know the way out, and so it becomes challenging for these exhibitors, even if they have put in the work at home. You know, it can be really, really difficult. Once a pig makes up its mind that it's done for the day, it can be challenging to get them to change their mind when it comes to that. And so I think it's impressive when we get back out here and we have one individual whose pig never went to try to find the corner. It's obvious that the prep time has been put in at home. Skin and hair is in fantastic condition, and this individual is maybe not the most intense with the whip and making sure we get the head in the air, and yet I still think that pig is so collected. She's so calm on the drive. The young lady with the Berkshire will be your champion. Congratulations.
Our champion in junior intermediate showman goes to Madison Burke. And her banner is sponsored by the Widow Livestock Auction. Next we will do senior showmanship.
Yes, I limited it to 1 a week.
So is it your Friday treat?
This is my Friday treat. You sent it to me.
showmanship. I know there's other judges around the state or even the country that'll do different things when you get to see your showmanship. Depending on the county, I guess sometimes I do too, and you know, whether that's make them switch pigs or leave the outgate open or take them out of the ring or so on and so forth. I think there's a lot of different things you can do, and yet I don't think in a division where it's like this obvious, I don't think it's necessary. And I don't mean to demean anybody, but I think there's one individual that needs to be recognized, and it's very obvious. And anymore in today's shows, to be able to win a big show, it takes so much more effort than it used to when I was showing. It wasn't. It's just so much more now than showing up on show day and hoping you have the best pig or hoping you put the best effort in at showmanship. It's a daily routine, a constant grind where you go out and you put in your work, and maybe your hogs don't look the best that day, and maybe you didn't end up with the best set that you've ever had, and yet going out every single day and making sure your skin and hair routine is going well, whether that's daily rinsing, daily washing, your conditioning, and making sure that the whites stay white and the darks get darker so that your pig can look the way it needs to look. And this young lady in front of me is going to be your champion, but I think everybody around ringside needs to understand the constant grind that goes into this. There may be people around ringside that have a little fatigue. I bet this young lady's won several times, and you're probably a little fatigued of seeing her win. And yet when you put this kind of effort in and it's this obvious, there's just no sense to not get to win. I think she does a fantastic job. Her set all day has looked fantastic. I think she's done an excellent job, and she'll be your champion.
Our champion senior showman is Kenny DeVries, and her banner is sponsored by Roger and Beth File. We'll now have our overall champion showman, so we'll have Madison Ramsey, Madison Burt, and Kennedy DeVries.
Well, this will be my last time in the microphone, and so I would like to say thank you for everything the guys here and in the back have done, getting pigs to the ring in a timely manner. I like to work quick, and I think these guys have allowed me to do so. If you would please give them a round of applause. Well, it's been a joy to come back out here, and I can't remember how long ago it's been since I was here, but anymore, we're so busy during the summer that I don't take a ton of county fairs anymore unless I know that they're going to be good and I'm going to enjoy my time, because it's really nothing that's more frustrating to me to drive 3 hours and wake up early, drive 3 hours and get there and see nothing but bad livestock, and that's definitely not what happened today. I've been impressed by the quality of livestock and even more by the quality of kid, and so I think everybody in the county needs to be commended varying differences here between experience levels, and obviously we've got the beginner, which I don't know how many times she's done this, but we've obviously got some room for improvement, and yet it's still obvious that this isn't her very first time doing it. I think she's done a good job today. The young lady that wins the intermediate division has done a great job, and obviously skin and hair on that pig is in really good shape, and I appreciate the work that you've done at home. Obviously we can be just a bit more intense with our whip and work just a little bit better on spacing, and maybe the young lady that wins the last division can help mentor you and pass on some of her knowledge, or maybe there's some trade secrets, I don't know. But anyway, I appreciate the opportunity to come do this. Your champion senior will be your champion overall. Congratulations.